I'm Lindsay Dunn, and welcome to One of My Stories, a podcast about the stories shaping me. This episode is part of my Alabama pilgrimage series, where I interview friends who traveled with me through the important sites of the civil rights movement. Each episode, one pilgrim shares their memories and reflections from the trip, starting with myself. We hope you will enjoy listening to each of these stories. If you would like to learn more about the Alabama pilgrimage, contact Durham Cares at durhamcares.org. And now, on to our show. Hello, everyone. This is Lindsay Dunn, here for One of My Stories, a podcast about the stories that are shaping me. Today, I'm continuing my series of interviews with friends from the Alabama Civil Rights Pilgrimage that I took this year. My guest today is Dr. Deborah Boston. Dr. Boston is an educator with a doctorate in leadership studies and adult education. She's now semi-retired, but is a very active member of many civic and community organizations, including the Mount Level Community Partnership for Racial Justice that set up the pilgrimage. So, Dr. Boston, tell us a little about yourself. What does your current life look like on an average day or week?
Yes, Lindsay, thank you for that introduction. I think that what's most critical in terms of my identities is that I convey the fact that I'm a Christian woman. That's first and foremost. I'm a mother, I'm a grandmother, and it's very important to me that I continue my professional work as an educator, although I am semi-retired, as you said. But I think that education means that we are lifelong learners, and that's what I try to be, and that's what I try to encourage others to be. So I enjoy writing professionally still. I enjoy writing for leisure and just for pleasure, and also enjoy having a positive impact in the community, and that's why I do the work with the Mount Level Community Partnership for Racial Justice. On an average week, I'm going to be doing some sort of reading or writing. But I'm also going to be spending time with friends and family. So I like to make time for coffee shops. I love coffee shops. I like nature walks. I like photographing nature and spending time with people that I love and care about. So those are the major things, I think.
It sounds like you've taken a lot of time to think through what's important to you in your life. I totally agree with what you said about lifelong learning and having just a natural curiosity. You obviously like to read, you like to write. Are there any particular subjects that you're really passionate about?
Actually, there are, yes. I'm particularly interested in books that have to do with spiritual formation. I really love Jan Richardson. I'm reading a book right now called Circle of Grace that is just wonderful. But I'm also doing some writing right now that's kind of more professionally based. I'm co-writing an article with a colleague about toxic leadership in the workplace. It's putting me back in my educational journals and research and the like. So the topics of interest vary depending on, what kind of work I'm doing or just kind of where I find myself. Obviously, for the Mount Level Community Partnership for Racial Justice, we do a lot of reading around those topics. So we've done a lot of reading. Kelly Brown Douglas, Stand Your Ground. Jesus and the Disinherited is one of the books that was one of our most recent book studies. It was great. We just completed Becoming Human by Dr. Luke Perry, The Holy Spirit and the Rhetoric of Race. So the interests vary, but are all very important to me in a personal or professional way.
So where did you grow up? I'm wondering how you grew up, and did you remember as a child when you thought about race, did you absorb any overt or implicit rules about race, or what was your understanding of that?
Well, I am a child of the 60s and 70s. I grew up in Winston Salem, North Carolina, not too far from here, about an hour and a half away. And yes, I certainly remember explicit and implicit racial rules and biases and the like. I remember seeing colored and white signs. I remember segregation pretty clearly. So I started schools in a all black elementary school in the first and second grades. I think I had a really good foundation in those schools with teachers who really cared about us and pushed us hard and really were committed to teaching and learning, as well as to the individual and to the community at large. So it was a great foundation. By the time I was in the sixth grade, I was in another neighborhood where the schools were predominantly white. So the few black children that attended those schools were maybe in a regular classroom, there could have been two or three black children, maybe. Sometimes I was the only black child in the class. So it was a different type of environment. And in those schools, all the way through most of high school, I felt that Black children were tolerated at best, that we were not really cared for. Our education was not really important. The teachers, the administrators did only what they had to do, and they had no personal commitment or interest in me or children who looked like me. So that was very different. And then by the time I graduated high school, 1972, schools had integrated, and there was an all black high school that was bused into my school, and things changed a good bit because administrators and teachers also came with the children that were bused in, and it was because of one of the black guidance counselors that I went to college. I remember this guidance counselor that called me into our office and said, "Where are you going? Are you going to college? What are your plans after high school?" And I said, "I don't know." And she said, "Do you want to go to college?" My answer was yes. And she said, "Well, you're going to do this. You're going to apply here, there, and you choose four schools, and we'll send off your application, and you're going to go to school. We'll find you the money. You're going to school." That's that's what I remember in terms of people who seem to care about me as an individual. Race relations were, I think they were difficult. So I remember, black and white bus system in Winston-Salem, black and white taxi system, segregated grocery stores and shopping and all that. I remember when we had the opportunity as blacks to attend Carolina Theater downtown for the first time. And I remember going up the fire escape with a group of teenagers on the side of the building. The steps were very rickety, very shaky, very scary. And we had to go up the fire escape to the balcony to sit in the Carolina Theater when we were allowed to go. And I vowed I would never do that again. And I did not. So it was difficult. It was really, really difficult in the 60s and 70s during this, civil rights era, and very obvious Jim Crow was still alive.
That's a lot to absorb, everything you just shared. You lived through segregation. That's a big deal. See, I love the Carolina Theater. It's one of my favorite places to go. But I had never approached it from that standpoint. And yeah, hearing, okay, if you were black, this is how you had to enter. You had to go in, the fire escape, that must have been very scary. Mm-hmm. And also the seats being so high up. When you remember going, I know you said you never wanted to go again. Does that mean, did you enjoy the experience at all to an extent? Or were you just like, this is not worth it?
Well, thank you for asking, Lindsay. I did not enjoy it. Mm-hmm. I did not enjoy it at all. What I did enjoy was we had black theaters in Winston, and I imagined that those theaters at one time were white theaters as well. But by the time I was going to the movies, they were the Lincoln and the Lafayette were the names of those theaters. And I remember that we had so much fun. We had talent shows. We had Saturday matinees where all the kids would come and spend the whole day at the movies, and you just watch movie after movie and have your popcorn, and you'd see all your friends from all over the city, and it was the best fun. It was community. Nobody treated you badly. You didn't have to go up the fire escape. The theaters themselves were not in the best condition. The seats were kind of grungy, and the theater wasn't really all that clean or whatever, but you were with your friends and you were with your family and you were with people who looked like you, who treated you well. Those were enjoyable experiences that I couldn't find it. We had the Carolina Theater and the Winston Theater, and those were white theaters in Winston.
That's such a wake-up call, I think, because in my narrow white brain, I might think those people that went to the Carolina Theater, they must have thought it was the grandest time. They, even though they had to go up the back, they just loved it because they got to be there too. And it's like, nope, you're wrong. So I'm so glad you shared that.
No, and likewise, the school system, the all Black schools, I'm telling you, a lot of people complain about them because they felt that, the equipment and the materials were inferior and they were hand-me-down books and all that. But the teachers were stellar. They were very strict because they knew how important it was for you to learn. And they cared. They knew that they were affecting your future and they wanted you to have a chance and they wanted you to learn. And they cared and they let you know it. Everybody knew. Teachers did not play with you. They wanted the best for you. And so, when you were able to attend white schools or integrated schools, you didn't have that type of community and you didn't have that type of advocacy. You just didn't have the relationship. So no, I don't think we were glad to be there.
Plus, like you said, having the feeling, having that, even if it's on a subliminal level, you're feeling like, oh, I'm being tolerated, I'm not being loved or cared for. It's not a good feeling.
No, it's not.
So, okay. Thank you for sharing all that. So you are part of the Mount Level Partnership for Racial Justice that helped create the pilgrimage. Tell us about that group. Who is it? What do they do? And why do they do it?
Yes. Well, I have to tell you first that I really love this partnership. It's a wonderful organization, and I feel very blessed to be part of this partnership. It's a coalition, but it's also a ministry made up of individuals from various churches and organizations in Durham. There are several churches that are part of the partnership. And so there's Mount Level Missionary Baptist Church, where it originated. There's Epworth United Methodist Church, Blacknell Presbyterian Memorial Church, Duke Memorial United Church. There's also a Pilgrim United Church of Christ, the 6-8 Church, which is a United Methodist Church. There's All Saints Anglican Church, Kings Park International Church, and Durham Cares. Durham Cares is part of our organization. The members are representative of the larger community that works together for racial justice in Durham. We began in 2020 as a partnership, although our work began and somewhat grew out of the Duke Divinity Center for Reconciliation. Reverend Linda Van Hook and I attend this institute most summers. And one summer, 2019, I think, is the summer that we decided that we needed to do something for our community. And we both have grandchildren. So about that time, Trayvon Martin was murdered, and it was a big burden, a large burden. And we thought we might be able to get the community interested in just having some conversations around racial reconciliation. So we held a summit. It was a racial reconciliation summit at Mount Level, and we invited churches from all over Durham to come together to have a conversation. We had a keynote speaker from Rwanda, Dr. Celestine Musakura, who came and talked about reconciliation in Rwanda and how that worked. And we just had a wonderful day of just fellowship and just meeting people and talking about what this could possibly look like. We did a survey and we found that people wanted to continue the conversation. And for some reason, Lindsay, we dropped it. I don't know. We just didn't pick it back up in terms of what next steps might look like. But shortly after that, George Floyd was murdered and COVID is now here. Mm-hmm. So we resumed our group of churches in a conversation on Zoom. and we started talking about, this racial justice idea. People came to the table. We had Dr. Willie Jennings to talk to us about the history of the problem of race and how largely it is, about land ownership and land acquisition and power, of course. And so one thing led to another, and book studies started happening, more lectures, and then we thought, well, why don't we form this partnership of people that want to be in relationship with one another and to work on this issue in the community, largely led by the church. So we formed the partnership in 2020. Initially, it was Blacknell and Epworth and Durham Cares and Mount Level. And it's just grown from there. So we continue our book studies. We do the Alabama pilgrimage to the civil rights sites in Alabama. Last year we created the Durham Freedom Schools, which is going very well. And this year we're adding another freedom school. So the work is just really quite rewarding to see how, in a time when it looks like our country is so divided, and it is, there are some people that want to work together for the good and what used to be called the common good of all of us. And so it feels really good to be part of something that the church is leading. It's also a unique organization because this organization was founded by myself and Reverend Linda Van Hook. So for a Black church to be leading this organization with two Black women at the head is kind of a unique position. But this thing belongs to all of us. It doesn't belong to me or to any individual or to any individual church.
So I didn't realize you co-found it basically with
Yes.
Reverend Van Hook. Okay. So you've been part of it from the beginning. We're going to come back to the pilgrimage in just a moment. Before we get there, I wanted to ask you about a phrase that I heard you say. When we were setting this up and figuring out what we would talk about, you mentioned the phrase, the model for pursuit of beloved community. What does that mean? Why is that important to you? And what does it mean?
Yes, I do believe that it's a model in pursuit of beloved community. And I think about Dr. Martin Luther King, I think, who coined that term, beloved community. And from what I've been able to read and understand about what Dr. King meant is that he was interested in justice for all people and oppressed groups and individuals, and not just any one group of people. He was interested in everybody having the same rights and same opportunities. And that's what we want. We would like to see in Durham that all children, all people, it doesn't matter what your race is or your gender, we would like to see that all people have opportunities and are afforded the same rights as anyone else. And one way to do that is by educating people. There's a lot of ignorance out there, Lindsay, as you well know. And there's a lot that we all need to learn because the history that we learned was not necessarily all the history that we should have learned. And some of the history was flawed. Some of the facts were held back, and there's still these efforts to keep us from the history that we all need to learn. And it doesn't matter that it's Black history or books by Black authors. We need to know everybody's history, and it shouldn't have a color to it. It shouldn't have a race to it. We need to know all of our roots, and that helps us to be better informed about our future, our present, and our future. So a lot of the work that the partnership does is to educate the community, to educate ourselves. And so that's why I think our book studies go so very well. We always have people at the table and who seem to be reckoning with learning truth and being part of what we call truth telling about the past and about the present and hopefully about the future. So I think that it is a model in pursuit of beloved community because we're at the table trying to work together and to have these bridges from one community to another, one church to another, individual to another. And we see evidence that people are forming relationships. A lot of the times we We hear that people in the small group breakouts from a study like the Birmingham jail study that we just completed decided that they were going to get together and meet at somebody's house for lunch and for, to have some sort of relationship that's ongoing, that's outside of our studies. So we get good feedback based on the activities that we're doing, learning experiences from the Alabama pilgrimage, as you well know, are immeasurable. It may not be where it should be yet. I cannot call it the beloved community, but it is a model in pursuit of the beloved community.
So that's almost like at work, we have these things called aspirational goals, where they're not goals you're looking to fix by the 6th month or the end of the fiscal year, but they're kind of the guiding light goals that we're looking ultimately to get to. Yes. So the beloved model of community sounds like it's an aspirational goal that can continue to drive and move the group forward together, even as you hit stumbling blocks.
Absolutely. We have a former associate minister from Mount Level. His name is Dr. Rodney Sadler. And Dr. Sadler recently posted a message on Facebook that I was really moved by. And let me tell you what he said. He said, race is a byproduct of colonialism, an idea used to justify taking land from people and people from land. It's an idea born of injustice. Thus, there is no such thing as racial justice. For just to exist, race must not exist. And I thought, that's it. That's where we want to get to. We want to get to a place and a point that we can drop the racial justice from our name, because race would no longer exist. It should not matter that I am, an African American woman. It shouldn't matter. I'm not saying to erase that or that I don't want to identify that way, but that should not be the first thing that matters to you. That should not be what's most apparent. Race is a byproduct of colonialism. And if we can get to a point that race does not exist, then we will be at beloved community.
It's a beautiful thought to shoot for. You mentioned you have been part of this group from the beginning. What is your current role, if anything, or do you just consider yourself a member? If somebody's listening who lives in Durham and they want to get involved, where would you direct them?
Yes, as a co-founder, I am involved on an intimate basis with the ongoing work in terms of planning the activities and the work that we do. But I'm only part of that because we have a nice structure, I think, now of an advisory team. We have several committees that plan our work. We have an education committee, community education committee that plans the recent Pentecost service downtown. We have the Freedom School Committee. We have several committees now, communication committee, that work together to do the things that we want to do during any given year. And so members from the various churches are part of those committees, as well as there's representation on the advisory committee. For people that are interested in getting to know more about us, they can go to our website. There's a registration form that will put them on a mailing list to receive a newsletter that will give them events and information about activities that we're planning to do. And they can also shoot us an email. Our email is on that same website. The website is a long name because it's a Google site, but if you just do a Google search, you're going to find the Mount Level Community Partnership for Racial Justice. And on our website, there's all kind of information about activities that we've done from the very beginning, the different books that we've read. There's a nice resource list. There are photos and just a nice, historical kind of account and archive of the kinds of things that we've been doing. If there's a church that's interested in being part of us, they just need to let us know that they'd like to work with us. And everybody's welcome. Anybody's welcome to join us. We've got plenty of room on committees for workers. We invite people to reach out and let us know. We will schedule meetings if people are interested. So if there's somebody that, would like to to meet with our advisory team or to meet with Reverend Van Hook and myself, we're happy to do that. We meet sometimes on Zoom or just have a phone conversation to answer questions. And typically, churches that join us want to meet initially just to have some conversation and see people and to talk with folks. And then they go back to their maybe leadership team or whoever the elders are that make decisions. And then they join us. We sign you up for the next meeting. Be happy to have you join us.
Okay, so we're going to turn our attention now to specifically talk about the pilgrimage. Since you've been there from the beginning, do you remember how did the Alabama pilgrimage get started?
Yes, the Alabama pilgrimage is an activity that grew out of our realization that we needed to form relationships among the partnership members. And someone said, well, let's go somewhere. Let's get together and do something together. Now, this was, right about the time that COVID was maybe getting easier for us to be out and about and to have some level of comfort in being with other people. So the wonderful thing is that we have Frank and Rosalie Turner, who are members of the partnership. They're also members of Epworth United Methodist Church. Frank and Rosalie, they lived in Alabama for some time, and they know lots of the history and the civil rights sites that we visit. And Frank and Rosalie have been heading tours to Alabama and also to Mississippi, where they also lived for several years now. And they said, well, what do you know about the history of Alabama? And some of us know some history, and some of us know fragmented history, and some of us know no history at all. And people are just all over the place in terms of how we've learned and formed ideas. So we said, yes, it's a good idea. And we started working on the first Alabama pilgrimage 3 years ago. So the first group of people that went were largely members of the partnership and a couple of other members of some of our churches and friends. Wasn't the biggest and the most diverse group ever, but it was a nice group and a nice way for us to form relationships among the partner members and get to know each other and have a common experience around civil rights. And that's how it started.
You said this was 3 years ago. I believe it's now been it's gone 3 times.
Yes.
Has the trip evolved in any way?
I think it has. After the first year, we realized that we would like for it to be a diverse group of people that have this experience together. So we worked really hard the second year to get a different group of ages and races of people that would have this opportunity to go to Alabama for the pilgrimage. And it was a lot more diverse the second year than it was the first time around. And even this last year, I think maybe racially, we were the most diverse group. So in terms of diversity, it has certainly evolved. In terms of how broad it is in the community, I think, we've grown there too, because, now there are members from other churches that are part of this experience, as well as people who are not in the church at all. So it's an open invitation, I think, to people who want to come and learn and grow and have an experience with a group together to learn more about civil rights.
So how many times have you been on the pilgrimage then personally?
This was my second time. I did not go last year, but this was the second experience.
So what was the pilgrimage like for you this time? I'm sure every time you go, it might be a slightly different experience. So
yes, this time for me, it was a lot more personal. And I say that because to some degree, Lindsay, I felt like I was going on assignment. Our pastor, Dr. Turner, told me and Reverend Van Hook that his grandfather, he believes, was lynched in Alamance County. And their family does not know what happened to his grandfather. All they know is that he got into some trouble with the law and he disappeared. He was never seen after whatever this trouble was. And They never found him. They never knew what happened to him. They suspect that he was lynched. And I went this time hoping to find some information about him at the Legacy Museum. Did not find him. We looked for his name. We didn't find him, but I still intend to write to or call the Legacy Museum and ask them how that research gets started and to see if, anybody might be working on his story, or at least to give them his name and to see if we can find out anything about what happened to his grandfather. So there was that assignment, but also it was different for me because I have become very close friends with Bev Iber, who's a member of your church, and Bob Powell. And so I wanted to have that experience with two of my friends, two friends who have a different background, a different experience than I do, but something that we could share together and experience together that I have experienced before. I don't think Bev had been to Alabama before. I believe Bob has been before, but he had not had a group experience. And I thought it would just be kind of interesting to have that experience with friends who have some knowledge of the partnership and some experience with us, but just two friends. And that was a wonderful thing to do together, to be able to hold each other in a personal way than maybe you can make with relationships with people that you just meet on a bus for the first time. So that was kind of nice. The pilgrimage does offer something different each time, and you're right. So our experience this year allowed us to go inside Dexter Parsonage. So you remember going inside of Dr. King's home, the family home, where he and Coretta were living, and Yolanda was the baby and the only child at the time. And that was a house that was bombed. And we got the story of Dr. King sitting at the kitchen table and being very burdened about, whether to continue this work. Obviously, very, very burdened because his family has been endangered now. And his wife and child were in the very room that had been bombed. We can just see him. I can just see him right now sitting there at that table with his cigarette and cup of coffee and praying, and calling out to God about this work that he's found himself in, and now that has touched his family in this very, very personal and dangerous way. And then his reporting that he heard the audible voice of God telling him to keep going, keep working. The last time we did not get to go inside the Dexter Parsonage because, like I said, a lot of places had not reopened and they were not allowing visitors inside the parsonage at that time. So we took a lot of nice pictures outside on the porch, but we didn't get to go inside and see it for ourselves. And just to see that furniture, that's some of the original furnishings, and to see how well preserved that house is, that was very touching for me. Also, the experiences that we had in Marion were a lot different this time. We did not stay overnight in Marion the first trip. We did visit, but we were on the outside of all those buildings, the courthouse and the church and the location where Jimmy Lee Jackson was shot. But to get to go inside that church this year was wonderful. And to hear Della talking and the lady that was singing, that was so beautiful. One thing that was different for me and very memorable was having met a student from, I think it was Indiana University. There was a student group there while we were visiting. So I was sitting beside this young man named Joel from Indiana State University, and he actually took a video of the lady that was singing. And my camera, storage was too full, so I wasn't taking videos. But he shared that video with me, and we've exchanged contact information, and we still stay in touch. And it was just a nice connection. It's interesting the kinds of connections that you make on pilgrimages like that. So, I was feeling a real sense of family in terms of connectedness with this young man. So he really does feel like, a nephew or a grandson, some child in the family. So it was wonderful to be in Marion. And, so there was just one thing after another like that. I will never forget skipping down to the riverside with Bob Powell, and we were going down just to see the steamboat where the Alabama brawl happened. It was like two little children skipping, hopping, jumping, skipping down the road together. And so, I love the way the partnership allows us to have relationships that any two human beings ought to be able to have, or any group of human beings ought to have, in terms of our common humanity. And I'm seeing that more and more people are open to that. They maybe haven't had opportunities, or haven't taken advantage of opportunities, previously, but now they're open and they're seeking ways to connect and ways to have relationship. And so the Alabama pilgrimage will make room for that. But most of everything that we do in partnership, to some degree, will allow that as well.
One thing I remember that we experienced together, which I don't know if you'll remember this or not, but when we were in the Legacy Museum, we were both sitting there listening to one of the singers. You know how they have the projected images? There was a woman singing "How Come Me Here," I think was the name of the song. And we were both just sitting there listening to her sing this very sad song. And I've several times now gone to YouTube and found versions of that song because it was quite, I was like, wow, her voice is like an angel. And I was trying to figure out just more about the song. We had that kind of moment together where we were sitting there not talking.
It's amazing the job they've done in that museum, isn't it? With the multisensory media that they have created, that really makes you feel like you're touching that person. They're touching you in some way. You can actually feel, the essence of that person. Yes, all of those people that you get to visit in those different stations impact you. They touch you. You can feel their pain. You can feel them.
Yeah, that's a great description. And my experience was just, on the one hand, it was a great experience, very powerful, but other times it becomes almost unbearable to have to stand there one more moment.
Yes.
And to absorb the pain, the amount of pain in that place.
Exactly. Yes.
But yeah, I love the memories you shared. I think like the Dexter Avenue house, I can picture in my mind that kitchen right now. I can picture that moment. The reason that is important is because, you didn't mention this. We were not allowed to take pictures inside the house.
That's right.
We could take pictures outside, but yeah, the house itself was quite, that's what my bathroom looks like right now. It's a hideous pink tile. It's almost too much, but that's what my grandmother liked.
Yes.
And that must be what was in style at the time to have it. And I actually have pink tile in my bathroom now. Maybe it's in honor of my grandmother. It was quite something.
Yes. Yes, it was. Yes, it was. I think that pilgrimage is one that it would benefit any of us to take. I believe that maybe I'd like to see someone be mature enough. I'm thinking back to the first year, and which child was it? Jude. Jude Miller went with us, and Jude was the only child. And we had not planned, just like we didn't this time, how we were going to go across the Edmund Pettus Bridge. So I found myself walking across the bridge with Jude, and I was really a mess, Lindsay. I was really having an emotional time about being on that bridge and remembering history and Bloody Sunday and all that stuff. And so I asked Jude, how did he feel? And he said, I don't like this. And I said, Jude, I don't like it either. And he told me that he was afraid of bridges. And I'm thinking, I am scared to death of bridges. And here I am, this much older grandma, older lady. I should be able to comfort this child, and I couldn't. And I'll never forget what he said to me, because Jude is quite intelligent. He's also quite a historian himself. And he said, I'm sure that the people that went across here, they were afraid too. When they were marching, they were afraid, but they did not stop. And it made me think about it. And I said, he's absolutely right. And they also had an idea what was waiting for them, what was going to happen.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, my experience going over the bridge was that, I don't know, I found it more empowering, I guess. I was thinking that I was trying to put myself in the mindset of a person, and I wasn't thinking about the fear, but I was thinking of like, oh, we're marching, we're doing this, we're finally doing something. Like how good it would feel to be there, and that for them the feeling of being able to do something probably felt very good to them. But yes, it was probably very scary, but I'm not sure how many of them were like, "Oh, I'm scared to walk across this bridge." I can be kind of ignorant sometimes and go, "The wonders of American engineering won't let me down." When of course we saw a bridge falling this year. So that was probably
Yes.
it's probably a wise thing to be afraid of bridges.
Mm-hmm.
So you announced right at the top, which I love, that you are first and foremost a Christian female, I think is what you said.
Yes.
And so as far as the pilgrimage goes, now obviously you said it's open. You don't have to be a Christian to go on this pilgrimage, but the community partnership is made of churches mainly and Durham Cares. So when you're on this pilgrimage, where is Christ in the journey for you? Where does he meet you? How does he meet you? Does he meet you?
Yes, I think Christ, of course, is everywhere. So Christ, there's opportunity for Christ to meet you if you are willing to meet Christ in anything. Christ met me skipping down the, that Market Street down to the River Walk. Christ met me when you and I had that moment together in the Legacy Museum. Being able to see that someone else is seeing and feeling what it is that you know that you're seeing and feeling lets me know that Christ has worked and moved. And being able to connect to Joel in the church in Marion, being able to see Dr. King, because to be honest, Lindsay, some people don't internalize these things that we're talking about. There are people that can experience the Alabama pilgrimage and not be moved. Yes, it's history, or yeah, that's a terrible thing that happened, but they're not moved. And I think that in order for me to be moved, or you or others to be moved, then Christ has to enter the equation. And so those times when I feel connected to another person, it's because Christ has entered the equation, and because I've been open to that, and that person has been open to that.
Yeah.
So yes, I think there were plenty of those times. I remember the first pilgrimage. We were at the Peace Museum, and with all the lynching monuments, and I'll never forget looking at Frank and Rosalie walk through there and looking carefully at the names and stopping and just taking it in, and then just sitting with it. And Frank was looking in particular for some names from Lowndes County. I think he might know some history about some lynchings in Lowndes County outside of Marion, and he was looking for some of those names. But I know they've been on that pilgrimage. They've done that so many times, but each time they are visibly moved by the experience. Christ has entered into that equation. And for someone's heart to be changed, and for you to feel something and to care about it and to have empathy, and to be able to show that in some way, Christ has entered the equation. So I certainly have had that experience for myself on this pilgrimage, but I've seen other people have it too. And sometimes we've shared it, and that's a wonderful thing.
And that's kind of what you were talking about Mount Level. That's what you were talking about also, is like wrestling at the table together with these things and doing it in a way that leaves space for that and invites you to enter that space and experience it together and to think about how you would prefer things to be in the world. Is there anything else you want to share about your pilgrimage experience before we close?
I don't know that there's something necessarily about the pilgrimage, but if you don't mind, there is one thing I'd like to share about the partnership.
Absolutely.
And we received a prayer that was sent to Margaret Frothingham by someone that attended the Pentecost service on last Sunday. And so this is how Christ enters the equation, how you experience Christ in ways that you don't even expect so much. Yes, the pilgrimage has opportunity for that. And like I said, anything else that we do, the book studies or lectures, the Freedom School, any of the activities and work that we do. But this lady wrote a prayer that she named Mama God. Mama God. She said expectations were high. Our team would connect with voters. I was suited up. I was ready, but God had other plans. The music and the crowd were rocking. People were clapping and singing. We all swayed to the rhythm and kept the beat with our feet. Enter stage right. A toddler, a mother and her toddler. How did the cutest toddler ever land here? She was curious and walked gently and quietly among the seated crowd, waving her stick with streamers. As the sermon went on and on, my gaze fell upon the mother's face. She watched the child smiling as the little one gave back looks of, I've got this. The mother followed her adventures, and she did at times bring her back to home base when she strayed a bit too far. But it was that look of utter love that held me. Is this how God sees me? Looking with such delight and loving care, ready to bring me back to the home base when I stray. I can't shake the image of a loving Mama God. I want to remind myself when I feel lost and afraid and wondering what the next step is, that God is watching me with that love. Mama God. And so with the Pentecost service, we had planned for months and months and months. We did lots of planning, and it was a very community-based work of planning and team of people planning together. But we did not have all of the answers to what that was going to be like, just like we didn't have all the answers to what the Alabama pilgrimage would be like. We don't have all the answers to what our book studies and even the Freedom School is going to be like, but we're open to God doing what God does.
Yeah.
Touching and moving and connecting people in humanity and God's love. So, we get to experience that wonderful thing that God does that we cannot do, but God will do when we are open to God's moving and to being human and accepting other people as human.
Wow. That's a beautiful story about somebody's reaction to the Pentecost service, which of course I was at and enjoyed thoroughly. So I love that. And I'm curious if the partnership has anything coming up you want to promote.
There will be continuous work. We do know that. We can sometimes need to step back and do a little assessment and work on which way we're going next. But our committees are very active, and people are very engaged and interested in continuing to work together. And that's just the most wonderful thing. People want to do this work, and they come and they work hard at the activities that we offer to the larger community.
Well, also, you guys are doing the Freedom School this summer, so...
Well, Freedom School will start the end of June, and this time we do have a middle school. So we have the Epworth for elementary children again, and then there will be a middle school at Shepherd. Shepherd Middle School will be the site for the middle school age children. So that seems to be growing, and we just have to see and be open to what God wants us to do next.
Yeah, and with you have all these people that have joined in events. You never know what someone will be inspired to do or suggest. So that's the beauty of a partnership, right? Things can move slow, but also you have many Many minds, many spirits, all
Yes,
coming
yes.
together to plan things.
That's right. That's right. And doing it together feels so good. It was so wonderful last summer to see that Freedom School, the way the community embraced it, and various churches doing different parts of it, and the community members coming in to read to the children, and different people in the community doing, STEM related activities with the children. It's an awesome work of God, the way the community comes together.
Mhm.
Um, to have good impact and such a great blessing. It's a wonderful blessing.
Well, I can't thank you enough for coming on and doing a recording with me. I just appreciate you being on here, just sharing your story, sharing your testimony, and telling us about the Mount Level Community Partnership. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you very much for having me.
Yes, absolutely. I have enjoyed it thoroughly. So
I have
that's all for
to.
this episode. Good
Oh,
night, everybody, and we'll see you for the next one.